Welcome, James, to the Creation for Liberation podcast. Really honored and excited to have you here.
Yeah, same. I'm excited to be here. I've enjoyed following you on social media, so I'm super excited to sit down and have this chat with you. So thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Likewise, you shared with me an advanced copy of your upcoming book, The Art of You, the essential guidebook for reclaiming your creativity. And there were so many gems. I mentioned to you already, I only have so much time to spontaneously get into a PDF file that is a book of folks who come on the show, unless I'm already reading their content. But I couldn't really put it down because it was so clear, it was so succinct. You also incorporate some of your visual art in there, which I loved. And there were so many lines that stood out to me. One of them being, in the beginning, you said, art is alchemy. It transmutes pain into beauty. When we create art, we open a tiny portal to the soul that brings light to a world of darkness. And in doing so, we give others permission to do the same. It's time to boldly share your vision with the world. We are waiting for your transmission. Thank you for letting me read back your own words to you
Of
and to
course.
the listeners. But this speaks to the importance of leaning into our creativity during these times of war and multiple genocides and violence and division. So, can you share more about the necessity and significance of seeing our art as ourselves and engaging in creative practice now in the times that we're in?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. That's such a brilliant question. When I look back I've been a student of art history and just a fan and connoisseur of art and creativity from painting to music, movies and books and poetry and these days social media. Um, and so much of the art that I love and just knowing about the lives of some of my favorite artists, so much art is born out of suffering,
Hmm.
you know, and I even think about what fuels my own art and my own creativity and my own writing. And I think about my own internal turmoil, that everyone has and to some degree, and how much that fuels my creativity. If I was just in bliss all the time, would I even bother creating? What would be driving and fueling my writing? So I think often my own work and my own writing is trying to make sense of things that are hard to make sense of, emotions that are difficult, or thoughts that are painful, and grappling with that. And in the grappling of it's almost like that becomes like Play-Doh or clay, and you're grappling with these hard emotions, or you're grappling with these hard thoughts or mental friction in some way. But the more you grapple with it, you craft it, and then you bend it and you shape it, and then you can sculpt it into something beautiful. And it's like, what better thing to do with our lives? What better thing to do for ourselves and others is to turn that pain and turn that sadness and turn that darkness into something beautiful. That is alchemy, right? That is the transmutation of lead into gold. It's turning suffering into beauty. And that's, to me, the some of the best art is also the saddest. We all love sad songs, at least I do.
Mhm.
And there's something beautiful in that sadness when it's released, because I feel like creativity is like a purge. It's like a cathartic release, and when you express it and you let it out, it's liberating. That's why I love the name of your podcast so much, speaking of creativity and liberation. um so I just feel like what art is really a service to ourselves first and foremost, to help transmute and release some of our stuck emotions. But then it's also, it can offer a light to others who are in need of that.
Mhm.
And I would also add to that art art has been historically and can be an agent of change and an agent of revolution and of liberation. Because in a way, I believe that creativity represents our own sovereign consciousness and our ability to respond. Because in a way, the opposite of creativity is being reactionary, because you're either reacting or you're creating. So in times of unrest, whether that's personally or globally, as we're seeing now, if we're not creating out of that, we're reacting to it. And I think in times of conflict, different people have different roles. Some people are there on the front lines, and some people are playing the role of journalists and kind of sharing information. But I think the role of the artist is to offer better alternatives, to plant visions and dreams in the collective consciousness that can take root and eventually be built. If you're thinking of things like, when John Lennon wrote and sang Imagine, and he was presenting a vision for a better world. And it's not like you write a song or you write a poem and suddenly the world changes, but it does have a ripple effect. So I think artists and creators have a role to plant seeds in the collective consciousness that will then have a ripple effect. And it might take 10 years or longer for that change to kind of come into effect. But if no one's dreaming it, then no one's going to build it. Before you can build a new society, you need to plan a new society. Before you can plan a new society, you need to imagine and dream of a new society. So I feel like artists are the dreamers, the visionaries, the image setters that initiate change in society. Even though you can't see its effects right away, it does just it's like a little domino effect. And my hope is that over time, the dreams that we as creators plant can grow and spread and really make an impact in the world.
Yeah, what you were saying on so many levels resonates. So like art as a service to ourselves first, that feels so important. And when I'm talking about like cultivating abundant creativity or being in abundance or prosperity with creativity, especially in these times or in general, yeah, owning the art that feels good for us, or owning what looks, sounds, feels good for us feels so important. Letting us be in the front row seat to our art process and practice. And then you said art represents our own sovereignty. And this ties so closely to liberation. When we are letting our art be representative of our sovereignty, we are letting our art be representative of our freedom and our liberation. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that you talked about the roles that each of us play in this time. I think media, from what I perceive it to be, pushes specific roles of like frontline responders or protesters or policy activists or what have you. Yeah. And the role of the artist is a nuanced and distinguished one. You mentioning the roles brought to mind Tony Cade Bambara's quote around the role of the artist or the writer is to make the revolution irresistible.
Yep.
And yeah, to play with dreams of a new world, or to challenge the ways in which us humans are dealing with a crisis, it brings the irresistibility to it, and the thoughtfulness to it. So really honoring our roles as artists in this time feels really important. And you said that, the opposite of creativity is reaction. And what came to mind when you said that too is another opposition to creativity is oppression and holding back what our role is, or holding back what our feelings are, or holding back what feels right in our spirit to create or make, even if it doesn't match what we're seeing the reaction is around us. which ties back to like what feels good for my spirit, what feels right for me. And
Yes.
for me, creating right now looks like noticing, for example, the suffering that comes about with my inner critic, or like noticing how that's adding so much fuel to the fire that's already present, or noticing how I go into fight or flight with what's happening as opposed to being at peace with myself and finding that before I can create. So yeah, thank you for all that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It makes me think that, being an artist in of itself is a revolutionary act, because society is not set up to encourage us to be artists.
Yeah.
That's kind of the oppression of society, is to pigeonhole us into certain roles, and to, our educational system here in the United States was literally designed to train factory workers. So you need to feel a real calling in your heart, where like you can't not be an artist. And it's the spirit that rises in us and is expressed through us. So just to honor that spirit, and to honor the voice of the muse, or to honor the energy within us that wants to create, is itself a revolutionary act, when society is set up to train us to follow the rules and to react to what's happening around us. But artists are there to remind us that we have sovereignty over our own consciousness, and that when you follow through on that, and then you learn to think for yourself and to create for yourself, the impact that can have.
Something just hit listening to you talk about, the original intention of our public school system, and what it means to listen to this calling to be an artist despite the consequences and circumstances. Another thing that artists do that I've heard, just me honoring my own calling, has done, and looking to artists like you has done for me, is give permission to listen to that calling. Because I believe in some way, I may go so far as to say that we all have some calling that is oppressed in some way in the society that we live in. And artists who are honoring that calling in the brave, bold, vulnerable ways that they are, gives permission to others to do that too. It's contagious. It's like the best viral to go viral.
It's the good kind of peer pressure.
Right.
Because if you're surrounded by artists, that just seems normal, and you're going to find a way to express it yourself. And you're right, not everyone, I talk about in the book how everyone's an artist, and how creativity is our nature. And I really believe that. And that doesn't mean that everyone is meant to be an artist in the same way that you and I are, like where you're an illustrator or you're a poet, right? Or you make memes, or, these are certain kind of creativity. But, I think being an entrepreneur is one of the most creative things you can do, to imagine a business, not only imagine a business, but to imagine a service, because a successful business has to be of service to somebody, or there's no money coming in, right? So to provide a value, and to imagine that, and to create a revenue stream where there wasn't one, that's a act of creativity like anything else. Or even, I have friends that host dinner parties that are just so artful and so well done, or you could, even your friendships can be a form of art. If you really invest in a friendship, and you put intention into that, or any relationship, the outcome of our creativity can take so many different shapes. But it's just a matter of, like you said, listening to that intuition, and it's like trusting your own intuition more than the external noise around you. That's like full of doubt and fear, and pressure to conform, and social expectations, and all these things. Maybe you have the voice of your parents in your head telling you not to be an artist, or you have the voices of just society telling you what not to do. But to listen and trust the voice of your intuition above all of that, man, that's a bold thing to do. To really, it really is. It really is. But it's just that little shift to trusting yourself and to trusting that voice and to let that guide you in spite of the obstacles and the noise around you. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful calling for all of us, just to step into our own creativity, whatever form that takes, and trusting it, even when it's not always easy and supported.
Yeah. Oof. It's such a beautiful thing and such a brave thing. Like what's coming up in this moment is how I come from a very collectivist culture, and I've sort of found some ease in this identity of disruptor just by way of what life has unfolded for me. It's not a chosen identity, but now I'm choosing it because it just happens to be the fact that that's just how I roll, I guess. And, to pursue a career in the arts has, from folks who have not given themselves that permission or had the privilege of that permission, can easily be perceived as selfish or indulgent or privileged, which maybe in some ways it all is. Definitely that's true. I have so many privileges that my parents maybe did not, my grandparents did not. And what a gift to be standing on their shoulders and to be able to pursue, even with the resistance, a career in the arts. But yes, it's just across generations, it's just no longer normal or feeling sustainable to not, right?
Exactly, because everywhere I look around me, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Everywhere I look around me, the institutions are falling apart and they're failing us. You know what I mean? So it's like the old options of how to conduct your life are no longer valid in a lot of ways, right? Like the university system is just not really working anymore. The economy is not really working anymore. It's like the old ways of like doing things aren't working anymore. So like, what do you do? Where are our leaders who are providing us with alternatives, or are looking out for the benefit of the people? Like, where are our leaders? Show me one leader in society today. It's hard. It's honest. It's shockingly hard to do. So what I feel like this is, it's so tragic, but it's also a great opportunity, because I think that we have to become those leaders. We have to stop looking for institutional validation, and everyone needs to show up in service, however that is. We need to be the leaders that we are lacking in our society. And that doesn't have to mean some big thing. You could just mean being of service to the people around you in that moment. Like, it could just be being of service to your friends and family. But it's so true that we need to create better systems and a better society. And I feel like that's on all of us. It's on us as individuals. So in a way, I feel like it's the power structures are hopefully they're falling apart in order to become decentralized. But in order for a decentralized society, it means that so many of us have to step up and take responsibility to hold up our end of that bargain, right? And not just look to presidents and the media or whoever to tell us what's going on that day. We need to be active participants in creating the world that we want to live in.
Yes. And it's funny because I think this inquiry of how to, as you have said, be the glitch in the matrix we want to see in the matrix, or be the change we want to enact in the world. I don't think it's going to come from like an intellectualized perspective where we're leading on our logic. And you've spoken about this in your book, much like I love to speak about too. You said, when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when your only tool is the intellect, everything looks like a problem that must be solved. And this really hit because a lot of folks who listen to this podcast are likely people who are engaging in the practice of decolonizing their minds and clearing out their creative rivers from colonial pollutants like perfectionism or dichotomous thinking or hyper intellectualization or just getting stuck in the gerbil wheel of the head,
Yeah.
reaching its limitations
Yeah.
as to what solution there is to embody or step into. And we're trying to create a new way of being or a new paradigm or foster, steward the new earth, right? It's not going to come from what we know logically. And I love that you spend a good chunk of the book talking about cultivating intuition. And it's clear that you are highly intuitive based on the wisdom and messages that you share in your writing and your art, and that it is a practice for you. It's not just a destination or a way of being, it's something you cultivate actively. How have you been cultivating your intuition lately? And what else do you want to share about this?
Yeah, great question. I think that if you just look at the United States today, or the Western world today, um, it really stems from this period called the Enlightenment, which was really the Enlightenment was great because the Enlightenment is what got humanity out of the Dark Ages, where it was like, rule of oppression by the Catholic Church, and the Enlightenment helped lead to a flourishing society. But the Enlightenment is founded on the idea that reason above all else, and logic and science, and that's kind of had a ripple effect and grown and influenced more and more up to our modern day. And I also want to say that logic's an amazing tool. The intellect is an amazing tool. I mean, the human mind is an amazing tool, but the problem is it's not the only tool. I've been thinking a lot about the balancing of facts and feelings, or logic and emotion, the head and the heart.
Mm-hmm.
We need both. We need both. But the problem is that the heart and in emotion and feeling have been severely suppressed by this over reliance on logic and reason, which is kind of, how this patriarchal system came into play. It's like, it's not that it's been a perversion of a power structure that's governed solely on logic and reason. And that's kind of led us to a dead end, is what I see. So I think we're long overdue to have a heart awakening and to tap into our emotions and our feelings. And that might feel a little trite to some people to say, oh, tap into your feelings. But honestly, I feel like there's so much more subtle information in our feelings and in the heart that is beyond the reach of the conscious mind. The conscious mind is a tool, but it can only process certain kinds of information. My own creative process, I feel like it begins in my body or in my emotions. I think that ideas and thoughts are downstream of emotions. What I mean by that is, for me, like, the creative process begins by tuning into my own body and just seeing how I feel. I don't start in my head, because again, the head and the ego is great for finishing a project, so to speak, like crafting it or editing it. Like, the ego is a great tool to bring in when you're trying to edit something and trying to maybe like finish it and get it ready for launch. Then you can get the mind in there and the ego in there to fine tune it. But when it comes to generating new ideas, I feel like feeling is a much more useful place to start, because you can go deeper. And then what I do personally is I sit with my feelings and I sit with my emotions and I just hold them for long enough, and I just try to just feel them until eventually an insight will bubble up from that. And then it moves into the realm of thought. And you still don't want to get too hyper focused and intellectual about it, but just entertaining the idea and then going from there. The structure of the book, in general is divided into the yin and the yang, right? Which is the feminine, which is like creative being, and then there's the masculine, which is creative doing. And we're both, everyone in the world is a mix of both yin and yang, feminine and masculine. These are just energies. These are dynamics. This is the Tao Te Ching. This is the yin and the yang. This is some of the oldest philosophy that we have. So in my book, I discuss how yin and yang apply to the creative process. So I believe that starting with yin, if you can't just work and make. You need time to really tune in and listen and not do anything. Because I feel like if you just are focused on productivity, then your work is going to be lacking depth and direction and purpose. But at the same time, if you just stay in the yin and you're intuitive and you're in flow and you're communing with spirit or whatever, you might not ever get anything done. You might not launch anything because you need that masculine to kick in at some point just to help you, power through and make it and launch it and build it. So you really need a mix of yin and yang, intuition and logic. And I definitely think it's time to stop repressing yin energy and stop suppressing the feminine. And that's in all genders. We all have feminine energy, and it's been repressed for I feel like centuries. And that the yin wisdom of the intuition has not been properly respected. So I feel like, and I see this all around me, I see this all around me is the awakening of the goddess. If you look back in ancient mythology, there was gods and goddesses. And I feel like those goddesses have been removed from our mythology and from our religion. So I think it's time to awaken the goddess within all of us and to return to that intuition to guide us so our actions will have more purpose.
I love hearing you speak about awakening the goddess within us. And I'd love for you, James, to share, like, how are you awakening your own inner goddess? I heard you say earlier that you feel the feelings and allow the insight to emerge from being with the feelings. What else would you like to share around your own practices of awakening your own inner goddess?
I've always been in touch with my feminine side, my feminine energy, and I think that that's kind of what being an artist is being balanced. I did a tweet a long time ago. It was like a meme where I was like, I am neither a male or a female. I am a secret third thing, an artist.
Yeah, that's real.
So I feel like the artist is sort of like this natural balance and dance between the feminine and the masculine. I don't know why that is. I think it's part of, because I think that's, well, maybe I do know why. What happens when you combine the masculine and the feminine? That's, that's sex. That's recreation. So creation itself is the life force of combining the feminine and the masculine. So when one can do that in within themselves as an individual, that's where individual creativity comes from, is balancing the feminine and the masculine. So for me, it comes naturally. I just I grew up with sisters, so I'm just kind of in tune with that. So I think it's important just to have a balance of both.
Yeah, I love that you uncovered what you do know, and what I think you do embody is that creation itself is a product of being that secret third thing of an artist, and that to be an artist is to listen to the creative process, which requires both. Yeah. Beautiful. In spirit of the theme of this episode, which is creativity as a channel for mystical illumination, which is a line from your book, you have some beautiful wisdom about setting powerful intentions that are bigger than you, even you as the artist. as it relates to this theme of channeling mystical illumination through creativity, there's so much that you share in the book. So I hope that whoever's listening to this turns to your book for like step-by-step bits of wisdom as to how to cultivate intuition, how to choose intentions, how to set an inviting space, etc. But what would you like to share now about leveraging creativity, leaning into creativity as a way to access, channel, and express mystical illumination?
Yeah, mystical illumination. That's an interesting term. I feel like when I look at the creative process, I feel like it is a spiritual ritual unto itself. And I think that in a lot of ways, I look at my own life and beliefs and spirituality, and it's like I don't subscribe to any religion per se, but I really do feel like creativity is my spiritual practice. And I think it's a true spiritual practice because I often think about the creative process and like, where does it come from? What's happening? You know, there's something that doesn't exist, and then however long it takes, a day or a year, whatever it is, suddenly there's something that exists, and it's creating something out of nothing, which is like, we gloss over how magic that is to create something out of nothing. Like, I think it says in the Bible that humans are created in the image of God. And it's kind of like, well, what does that mean, in the image of God? It's like, well, first of all, what is God? Well, in the most simplistic sense, God is the creator. That's if there is, God is just the creator or the creation itself. So if we're made in the image of God, it's like we are born and alive to create. And we're like baby gods practicing the game of creation by making our things. It's like, I created this. Like, that is a power, that is a godlike power to make something out of nothing. And we all do it all the time. And it's like, that's so special. So I feel like, where do these things come from? If I make something, I just wrote a book, right? Where did this book come from? It's hard to answer, but I think it's an interesting question. And I really think that our intuition and even our imagination, these are portals to other dimensions. Quite literally. And like, these are there's some corollaries to this. Like, even if you look at the philosopher Plato, he talked about this thing called Platonic ideals, which is kind of a spiritual idea where it's like there's things that exist in the world and that have physical form, but in order for them to exist, there has to be a Platonic ideal, which is like an archetype or a prototype of that thing that exists in the realm of thought. Or if you look at the Hindu tradition or the Vedic tradition, they talked about two worlds. There's the world of Brahman, which is the world of eternal energy and spirit. And then there's the world of Maya, which is the world of the physical world, which is ultimately, Maya is an illusion. So I feel like the creative process begins in Brahman, or it begins with Platonic ideals, where we're leveraging our intuition and our imagination to tap into another realm, another dimension that exists as thought or as spirit. And this is the realm where the muse lives, right? So we tap into that and we hear a whisper of something. That's anything that exists. Look around you. Anything in this world that exists began as a tiny little whisper into someone's ear, you know? And they're like, you could easily dismiss that whisper and be like, I have work to do. I can't entertain this idea. But you're getting a little bit of a whisper. And I think the muse and our intuition is the same thing. I think that our intuition is the voice of the muse that's calling to us from another dimension with little insights. And then we can actually take that and gradually turn our imagination into reality. So I just think we are birthing mystical illumination in everything that we make, because we're listening to whispers that come into our ears from God knows where. And at first it's so private and it's so sacred. Like I've got an idea, like I have an idea for a book, but I got to keep that to myself. You can't go around telling everyone you have an idea for something, because we all have ideas for something. But then to commit to that idea, this is where, and I think that the muse, I believe that the muse is attracted to dedication. And if you, the muse speak, we all have the capacity to hear the voice of the muse. But if we ignore that voice and carry on throughout our day and just keep suppressing that part of ourselves, eventually the muse is going to stop talking to us, because she can no longer trust us, because we don't follow through on it. We don't have enough dedication and commitment. But when we do commit, and you take that idea and you develop it, whether it's a day or a year, or it could be your whole life, then the muse, then there's a real relationship with the muse, and then she can trust you, so you'll keep getting more ideas. So I think it's just the dedication to spirit, and to bring our visions to life, that we're really birthing a mystical world into this reality. And I think it's such a sacred calling when you look at it like that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say, y'all should listen to the podcast on YouTube, because I just love, James, every time you talk about the muse and pause, there's so much delight in your face talking about the muse. You like pause and smile. It's yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah, well, I like her quite a bit, so I get a little excited. No.
Yeah, y'all definitely have a relationship, and it just ties back to the yin element of creative practice, like the pausing, slowing down to listen to the whispers.
Yeah.
Like to deeply and actively listen is such a yin practice.
Yeah.
And requires, the rest, the receptivity to receive. And then to hear you say that the muse really is attracted to dedication. Yeah, devotion is what makes it a spiritual practice. I know for me, my muse loves when I'm devoted to them. And I'm like, I will show up. I don't know what you have for me, but I'm here. Anything goes. And yeah, that discipline, that devotion to keep showing up is that yang energy to me, and providing the structure, the ritual, the containment for her flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So any creative process is the equal balance of both. And I think that, yeah, an idea is not going to come to you in like a flashing billboard. Like, the universe sometimes speaks to us through, the universe sometimes needs to resort to drastic measures to get through to us, right? But it's like, the idea is you're not going to have like a flashing billboard saying this is exactly what you need to do. It's subtle. It's more subtle than that. So just be attuning our own awareness to the voice of the muse, which is our intuition, which is just, it's our natural state when we are not distracted by everything happening around us. There's a quote in the book that says, a mind that's too full of information has no room for inspiration. So if you're just constantly distracted and you're never slowing down to listen, you're not going to notice the voice. But I believe that the voice is natural when we slow down enough and start attuning our awareness to that silence. Like one way I talk about meditation and also listening to the muse, I think they're also similar, because the meditation is you're kind of quieting the mind, right? So I talk about, it's about listening to the space between your thoughts. So it's already there. You don't need to do anything. It's just about training your mind to not get caught up in all the mental activity, but just listening to that empty space between your thoughts. And that's what opens up that portal or that connection.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to look at meditation and what it means to quiet the mind, which I think many folks feel is inaccessible, that meditation only reveals how unquiet the mind is a lot of times. But to hone in on the in-between space feels really juicy, much like in yoga, focusing on the in-between space between inhale and exhale. Pausing at the top of a breath or in the exhale of a breath is really the training more than anything, of letting the body be in nothingness without air or full of air and really feeling the fullness of it. There's potency there. So cool.
Absolutely.
Well, James, as we close this episode for now, what do you want to share in terms of where people can continue to tap into your wisdom? You probably already follow Words Are Vibrations on Instagram, but if you don't, tap in there. Anything else you want to share as to where folks can stay attuned to what you're up to?
Yeah, Instagram is my main hangout online. So you can find me at Words Are Vibrations. And if you go to the link in my bio, you can order The Art of You, my new book. You can check out my podcast, Sunflower Club. I also do online classes, like writing classes. I teach a class on how to make memes. So things like that. So I do a lot of online classes and some one-on-one coaching and consultation work as well. But for sure, check me out on Instagram, and if you pre-order The Art of You, there's going to be a bunch of bonus gifts and live events that come along with that as a free gift. So definitely helps to place a pre-order.
Yes. Thank you so much, James. Appreciate you and all that you do in the world, and all that you have been doing, because I've been following you for years and it's been consistent. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way about you.